Welcome to another episode of Keys to Success with myself, Gypsea. That's the biggest challenge, overcoming fear and actually going past the fear. Welcome to another episode of Keys to Success with myself, Gypsea. Today we have a very special guest on here who's a multi-award-winning auctioneer. He also holds the record for most of the Gold Coast's biggest sales, knocking down the hammer. It's Justin Nickerson. Welcome to the podcast.
Kind introduction. Thanks for having me, Gyps.
It's so exciting. I'm glad that you made the time to come in. I know you're a super busy auctioneer running around, Gold Coast and Brisbane?
Yeah, well, our company sort of comprises Australia and New Zealand, but my core area is the Gold Coast and Brisbane.
Yeah, okay. So what, you're jet setting between here and there as well?
I don't travel that often, particularly since having younger family. I try not to travel, but we do have kind of roots or tentacles all the way through Australia and across to New Zealand. So
love that.
Yeah, it's cool. We get to see a lot of different markets and landscapes, which keeps it nice and diverse and interesting.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, well, you've definitely made an impact on our market, that's for sure. But I think before we dive into the nitty gritty, can you tell us about your backstory? How did it all start?
Yeah, it feels like a long time ago now. I sort of came out of school not really knowing what I wanted to do, like a lot of people.
So you finished school?
I did finish school, yes.
That's
about the level of my end of my education too. So started a uni degree, but my heart wasn't really in it, I think.
What was that?
Business degree.
Okay.
Yeah, I call the business degree the degree you do when you don't know what degree to do. So it's kind of the one you just sort of start. But I was working for the AFL at the time, so travelled a bit through North and Central Queensland. Bought a house quite young in one of the kind of regional towns up in Mackay. So went through that experience of kind of what real estate was a little bit like. Had a mate who was a real estate agent as well that gave me a bit of an insight to it, and then wanted to come back to Brisbane, which is where sort of friends and family were, and didn't have a uni degree, didn't have many prospects for what was kind of going on, and thought, well, what do you do when you want to wear nice clothes and try and drive a nice car? And real estate's the beacons that call. So was an agent for 4 years, and then at the end of that decided I wanted to be an auctioneer, and then became a full-time auctioneer beyond that point.
Amazing. So you're an agent for 4 years. Did you stay at the same company for 4 years, just learn the ropes and then decide you wanted to auctioneer, or did you always kind of knew that's what you wanted to do?
I think I started with Ray White. Funny enough, quick plug for Ray White. I think one of the good things about Ray White is that obviously auction is in their DNA. Like, you can't really work in a Ray White office and not be really heavily exposed to auction. So because I started in a Ray White auction office, they were auction orientated. They had big auction events at the time. They had the Friday morning auctions in Brisbane at the time, up in Eagle Street. So I just saw auction a lot, saw some auctioneers and thought, that'd be a really cool kind of career path to pursue, which was funny because through school, I was not a natural gifted public speaker, didn't do debating, didn't do anything like that. Even now, I wouldn't say that I'm a gifted public speaker. I think I've learnt skills that have sort of helped me. But it was an interesting career choice because as someone who's introverted and not a public speaker, an auctioneer is kind of like the exact opposite to that.
I actually don't believe that because I feel like you are not. I don't feel like you're introverted, and you're an amazing public speaker.
It's very kind of you to say that. I'm definitely socially introverted for sure.
Okay.
Professionally, probably extroverted because you have to be in your role in your job.
How do you push past that if you're an introvert doing an extroverted role? Like, what tools do you use?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think it's almost like putting on a cape in a way, like you sort of just do it because that's just what your job demands of you. If you don't like public speaking or can't learn to tolerate public speaking, you're not really going to have a future as an auctioneer. So that was something I needed to sort of get past at the start, was that kind of fear of, public speaking and putting myself out there, naturally, and being in social settings and so on and so forth. But even now, like in my life, I'm very much an introvert, like my own company or my family's company. Outside of that, I've obviously got friends. I don't want to make it sound like I'm a complete loner or loser. I've got friends, but I don't have 400 friends that I go down to the pub with and we just spend 6 hours down the pub. Like, I've got friends and close relationships that you draw upon. But I think it's just been one of those things. I think everyone's got parts of their job that force them to adapt or change their personality, and that's just how mine's fallen as well.
Yeah, okay. So when you say you put that cape on and you push past that fear, like, How do you do that? Because that's a big key for anyone listening, right? And they're trying to do something that's challenging. That's the biggest challenge, is overcoming fear and actually going past the fear until it becomes habitual, like what it is for you.
Yeah, and it's definitely habitual now. Like there's no fear now. I can't remember, we had big auction yesterday. I can't remember if actually you, Gypsy, asked me if I got nervous before the auction. And I don't get nervous before auctions now. Not that I don't care, but I think nerves for me come from a place of not being able to control the situation. And I feel now with the amount that I've done, I've got relatively good control in most situations. So at the early days though, it was just repetition. It's like, well, what I fear is public speaking, but what I fear more is actually wasting my life and not making a success of myself. So the fear of overcoming public speaking was a smaller fear than the other one. So I'd rather conquer the small fear rather than the large one. And as you do something, like you said, it becomes habitual, you get used to it. But there's still, I wouldn't say now there's days where I fear things, but there's days where I don't feel like being an extrovert or don't feel like public speaking, and you're kind of sitting in the car and you're kind of like, all right, you can do this, Funny, I got a 4-year-old daughter, Piper, and we're teaching her words at the moment, and a word she learned last week was confident, what confident was. And we say, what's confident? She says, I can do this. And it's sometimes like that in the car, right? I got to go, you can do this, get out there and get it. But once you're around people, you feed off people, and I've got a really great and diverse client base that gives me energy. So once you're in the scope of it, it's pretty straightforward and pretty easy.
Yeah, amazing. So you push past fear and then you do something, you created a habit. And then what are because I was listening to a podcast about you actually, and you were saying in the mornings, like I always go back to a morning routine, right? Because you're presenting in front of sometimes hundreds of people, and there's a lot of money on the line, and a vendor's like entrusting you to get them a best price as well as the agent. How do you set your mind up for those situations so you're always on?
Yeah, I think there's a really strong link between physical health and mental health. So for me, I know that if I feel good about myself, if I'm exercising and I've got a good exercise routine, if I feel good, I'll do good. So that's the biggest thing for me, is making sure that my physical fitness is as good as it can be. If my physical fitness is as good as it can be, my mental fitness will be. And if my mental fitness is as good as I can be, I'm the best version of myself that I need to be. It might have been the podcast you're talking about, but I talk about how really I kind of wear 3 hats. I wear a hat as an auctioneer, so get in front of a crowd, call an auction. The client base that uses me, that's one hat. The hat as the leader of our business, the auctioneers that demand either leadership from me or inspiration from me or help from me or guidance from me or whatever, or support from me, that's another hat. And then there's my hat of, being a husband and a father. And you can't really give any of those 3 the best, of you if you're not giving yourself the best version of yourself as well. So I'm lucky because I'm an early riser by nature, so that creates some time in the morning. So I'm usually a morning exercise sort of person, but I just know the days that I don't exercise, I feel 5% off, 6% off, 10% off. And if I'm 10% off, that affects my performance.
Yeah, it all compounds.
Yeah.
And you still do like journaling? I know you said in a podcast that you journal in the mornings.
Yep.
Like what do you mean by that?
I just write. And sometimes I write 3 lines, and sometimes I write, a page. It depends on what I've got going on at that particular time. But for me, it's just a way of kind of getting out of my own head and putting it on a page. And the other thing I really enjoy doing is reading back to like a year earlier and reading the challenges that I had a year ago, and realizing that the challenges that we think now are like big world challenges, right? Like, I'll never get past this. This is huge. And then a year's time, I'm like, oh, I forgot about that. Like,
that's amazing.
Yeah. So it's just a good perspective gainer for me to say what you're dealing with today is not what you're going to be dealing with tomorrow. Just make the best decisions you can today, and tomorrow will kind of look after itself.
That's so cool. So I guess a key thing for listeners, right, is like having that journal with like the problems that you faced or challenges that you've had, writing them down, reflecting back and seeing, I guess, how far you've grown as well in that time frame. It sounds like you get to reflect on yourself back then and be like, holy moly, like I got annoyed about that stuff. Like that's like tiny problems now. Yeah, definitely. And I think it's a cool, like I like writing. Not everyone might like writing. Maybe for some people it's meditation, or for some people it's having a voice memo rather than writing. I like writing. It's something that I like to do. I think for me, it's just also routine. So
most mornings, so this morning's a good example. I ran this morning early. I was up at 4:30 running this morning. I came back. My daughter's an early riser, so she was awake. So we went for a walk together, which we usually do most mornings. Get coffees, bring them back home. My sort of son, my 5-month-old son and wife are sort of awake then because at the moment she's got very disrupted sleep. So you're kind of trying to get as much sleep as you can. So hang out with them for a little bit. Got a ice bath at home, so I always jump in the ice bath every morning.
Yeah.
Yep, every morning, and then get ready. And the thing about it is that the one attribute that we see of all great agents, and which we have an insight to, is consistency. So, but consistency is not something you can turn on and off. You can't go have a morning routine that's all over the place and then at work go, I'm going to be super consistent at work. We say that consistent behaviors create consistent actions create consistent results create a great career. So for me, I can control my actions and my behaviors first thing in the morning. That's my focus, is making sure there's consistency in there around that routine. That'll feed into the rest of the day and then my energy throughout that day.
Yeah, it's such a good tip for listeners as well, because I think everyone sees this success from the outside. Like, you auction some amazing properties and breaking records, and, you know, most people that have a luxury property use you on the coast at the moment. Like, I know for Cronulla Ave, when we had that beachside record sale, like, you were a part of that. And that was amazing to have you there, but people don't see the timeline of what got you there. And it was doing the consistent things all the time that probably were mind numbing for some people. They drop them off because they're like, well, that's too boring. But you just keep doing it. And then eventually you reap like the fruits of all of those. Yeah.
And there's still mind numbing things that we do. You know, our job is a relationship game. So we're creating relationships, we're maintaining relationships. I'm big on admin, paperwork, things like that. So we've got CRMs that track all sorts of stuff that we do around those kinds of things. But yeah, it's nice to have that recognition. But it is a long time coming. You know, I've been a full-time auctioneer now for 14 years. It's a long time.
That is a long time.
And people we have a lot of particularly young auctioneers that see what we do now and go, oh, I want to do that and I want to be an auctioneer. And that's really cool that it kind of inspires other people to do it. But also you're seeing 14 years of the end product of 14 years. That's not going to be the reality for the first 5-10 years of your career. It's going to be vastly, vastly different to that. But that's just part and parcel of it. Like, you just sort of earn the right to do that. But it's funny when you do those big auctions, sometimes it's almost like a surreal feeling. Like I was saying to someone the other day, we had an auction 4 or 5 weeks ago and it sold for 15 million. And you're kind of hearing yourself yell out 14 million as a number and asking for like another quarter or whatever it might be. And it's almost like a surreal feeling. You're almost kind of like out of body for a minute going, is this actually like my life? Is this actually what I'm really doing? Like, and I'll walk into an auction sometimes and I see all the people there and I'm like, this is so weird that I'm the only person here that's going to have to stand at the front of everyone and yell stuff out. Like, it's such a weird.
And it's not your money either.
Yeah, it's a weird existence, but it's really cool. Like, it's such a good occupation. Like, anyone that asks me what I feel about it, like I owe just about everything to auctioneering. Like, it's been such a cool occupation for me and it's provided so much. But like every occupation, it has its good days and its bad days and its pitfalls and its hard works and its knockbacks and its setbacks and its exhilarating moments. It's just sticking in there for long enough. That's all it is. It's doing the little stuff for long enough, well enough, and then it's just time then.
For sure. It's like Atomic Habits. I read a lot of James Clear's quotes and he talks about like doing the consistently boring tasks. And that's the key, right? The most boring things, if you do them consistently, that will make you great.
Yeah.
Because most people want the quick fix. They want to have the adrenaline rush that we get. They don't want to do all the boring tasks to get to the adrenaline rush.
Yeah.
But that's what you actually have to do. And it sounds like that's what you've done.
Yeah. And a bit of a crass one, but I was talking to an agent the other day and he said to me, he's talking about this, he said, I've tried them like 4 or 5 times. They're not selling. And I said, how old are you? And he said, 31. And I said, how old are they? He said, they'd be in their mid-60s. And I said, well, assuming you outlive them, which statistically you will, based on statistics, they're selling. You just have to keep living like that's and stay in touch with them. Like, everyone's selling at a point. Like, you know, we stay in touch with people to win their auctions, and sometimes we'll win clients and sometimes we'll lose them, and sometimes we'll, like, you know, we kind of have with you guys a bit of a shared custody where, you know, Dave does a lot of the auctions and we get sort of called off the bench every now and then. You know, everyone's changing auctioneers at some point in the future, be it next week, be it 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 50 years from now. You just got to stay in touch with them long enough. You know, that's been a big hallmark of our business and what we try and put forward to our team as well.
And how do you differentiate yourself in a market like this? Because there's, like you just mentioned before, there's a lot of young people getting into auctioneering and trying to come up in that position. What kind of key tips would you say have helped differentiate you guys and give you the success that you've had?
I think it's just time. Like that's honestly the number one hallmark that we've had is we've stayed around for long enough. You know, in the last 14 years, I haven't taken any corporate roles. I haven't done anything. You know, I've with a couple of kind of slight swerves, but never left the actual road. I've never changed what I've done. So that has just been consistency, you know, and it's 14 years of accumulated relationships. It's 14 years of getting to know people. It's staying in contact with people. It's treating people well, even if they're not doing anything for me. You know, like Larry Milan's a great example, your principal. Like I've first met Larry to try and call these auctions maybe my first couple of years of starting. I'm not sure what year he changed from location to Ray White, but I've been trying to get Larry's auctions really for every bit of that 14 years.
Wow.
And he's probably knocked me back at least 20 times. And if I'd ever just gone, oh, well, that's it, Larry, you know, what a tool. I'm not going to talk to him. He's off to the side. I don't think he's a tool, by the way. I think he's great.
Yeah. Love you, Larry.
You know, and burnt that relationship, then who knows? But I actually like Larry. Like I stay in contact with him. I have conversations with him. And at some point that may help me. At some point it may not. But just from time and consistency, that can build a client base.
Yeah, for sure. And if you're being there and you're showing up all the time, I think that's like repetition, you know, and keeping that relationship. I think something really key you said there was like, even if it is a long amount of time that you stay in touch with someone, still providing value to them. I think that's a big key thing you do that differentiates you to other, you know, potential auctioneers, is you actually put in the effort like you did with me. Like you spent the time to train with me, which meant so much to me. And the fact you do that for people without expecting anything in return, knowing that good things will come from it in the future. Like I understand business, but I think, yeah, that's a really, I guess, a credit to you that you put the effort into people to help make them great, because you know it will help you and help them in their career as well.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
It was amazing. So thank you. You've changed my career in only a few sessions. So
good. That's very, very kind of you. Yeah, I do appreciate you saying that.
And do you like the training side of things? Is that what fills your cup, or what fills your cup?
I have a love-hate relationship with training, to be honest. Some days I really enjoy training, and other days not it's a chore, but it's definitely more work than other days. I think there's two things. Firstly is it depends a lot on the group or the person I'm training. If the group or the person is energized and receptive to change and genuinely wants to grow, it's training's enthralling. If you have groups that are adverse to change or maybe stuck or apathetic, training is a real battery drainer. So it depends a little bit on the group. Now, my responsibility is to try and obviously uplift that group as much as I can. That certainly falls on my shoulders, but you can definitely notice the difference between an engaged, proactive group and a reactive, stuck group. So, you know, someone like you, I never have a problem with sitting down and spending time with you, because I firstly, I love the person that you are. You're enthusiastic, you're open, you're ready to grow, which is really good hallmarks. But also know that it won't be time wasted, because I know that you'll take it and put it in your business. Like it won't be an hour and a half or an hour or 45 minutes of my life that I'm throwing away and you'll sit there and take notes you'll never look at again. Like I know that you'll action upon them, and that's the most important thing. So that's probably the first thing. The second thing is just how much training I do. If I do a lot of training, it becomes draining, because you're kind of repetitive and you're saying the same thing. If you're doing it sporadically, then you know, it can be enthralling. But it also depends on the context. Like, you know, we do one-on-one sessions all the way up to speaking in front of, you know, large crowds. They're all kind of a little bit different too.
Yeah. Okay. What do you like the most?
Oh, my ego likes big crowds. My ego loves big crowds.
Yeah.
I think they're different, right? Like at a one-on-one session, you've got really intimate connection with someone. You're talking to them, they're responding, you can see their reaction. It's a really intimate connection. When you do large crowds, you're talking to everyone, but you're talking to no one. Like you're really not hitting anyone directly. You're kind of spreading a big message widely. So they both have their kind of advantages and disadvantages, but definitely my ego likes big crowds for sure. Yeah.
That little extrovert coming out of you.
Just the little one. Yeah. He pokes his head out
He's like,
every
"Ooh,
now and then.
I like this crowd."
Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
That's amazing. And so being an auctioneer, obviously, is that the plan for you for a long time? Like I know you were saying you've got a family, and a lot of listeners on here are in business, having families and kids, and there's this big like stigma against like working in a corporate life and having a family now because people feel that it's going to take them away from their business. Like how has having a family like impacted your career?
Yeah, look, it's had a huge impact. Like everyone, my daughter was born during COVID, so that was a bit of a different experience because I was home a lot during COVID. So her early months, I was there all the time. Like really got to experience that. Whereas with Jackson, since he was born in December, it's been. Yeah, I had the Christmas holidays with him, which was great. That first sort of 4 or 5 weeks, which was unbelievable. But really from the end of January onwards, it's been pretty flat chat. I've had Easter break and that kind of thing. But other than that, it's been pretty intensive and pretty constant. I think the balance, like I was speaking to a guy about this morning, we were talking about balance and it's such a hard thing to hit that balance because, I talk about those 3 hats. I always, if I'm putting more into one hat, it has to come from one of the other 3. You can't create more time. So my thing has always been really if I was taking time from buckets, I'd take time from my family bucket, I'd take time from my leadership bucket, and I'd put it in my auctioneering bucket to grow my individual career. The real intent and focus has been to, if I need to take something from a bucket, I'm now taking it from my auctioneering bucket and putting it in the leader bucket and the family bucket. So now that's not always perfect and that's not always how it works, but that conscious decision to prioritize family things is been a real kind of focal point for the year. My wife contributes massively to that. She'll book out, dinners for us to have and book out holidays early because if she doesn't book it, they won't be holidays anymore.
Yeah.
She has a direct line, I'm pretty sure, to Caitlin and Lauren to let them know not to book anything, on holidays. So they fall in a line, who are our admin and customer and marketing managers who do a great job. So, but like I get to those days off and I'm so grateful that it's happened. And trying to lose that mentality for me that there's always one more auction to call. Like there's always another auction to call. Well, there'll always be an auction to call, but the time that I have now with a young family I can never get that back. So that's important to me. And also growing our team has to be a focus, not a byproduct.
Yeah, so your priorities have sort of shifted, but I think that makes you great in business, right? If you have something that's motivating you, like you said, you take away from the auctioneering and put it into the leadership bucket to help grow the business so you have more free time.
Yeah, you're definitely right. But I would say, like auctioneering, obviously I've achieved a few things. So I'd say on the auctioneering,
a few things.
Quite
a few awards there.
I'm trying to hide my ego, Gypsy. False
I'm
modesty.
back to an introvert.
You called me out in my false modesty. I obviously as an auctioneer, I've achieved a bit. I haven't achieved much as a leader yet. Like we've grown our team, but there's still bigger challenges are in front of us. And as a husband and father, I'm still learning very much so. So although I might in one area be, not necessarily a 10 out of 10, but closer to the top, the other 2 areas I'm probably average or below average. So they're the areas that need work.
Yeah, okay. And there's no real balance. It's just taking stuff from one hat and putting it in the other.
That's what balance is, right?
Yeah.
Balance is getting them in alignment to what you want them to be, not, having one out of whack with the other. But for a long period of my life, the first 10 years of being an auctioneer, the auctioneer bucket ruled heavily over the other 2. Yeah, but if I ever need to take water, it'd be from the other 2 and we'd put it in the auctioneer bucket. And
you kind of have to, and I think it comes back to having a really good support system, right? And it sounds like your wife has been that for you.
Yeah, unquestionably. Yeah, and it's a cliche, but there's no way I could do what I do, without her support. And even now, like I work last Sunday, so I work every second Sunday. I work last Sunday. I was driving out of the house at 8:00 in the morning or 7:30 in the morning, and I could hear both kids crying as I drove out. And I was like, I've got 9 auctions or 10 auctions. I had a pretty big day last Sunday. And I was like, I've got the easier job by a country mile. Like she's got 2 kids that she'll be wrangling all day and she's sleep deprived. So yeah, it's important. But also the thing that we've really tried to maintain is that acknowledging that both of our roles are really important. Like her role to function our family is very, very important in its present format. My role in being, working for our family and is also important. Like they're both important. And the hard thing for her is she has a very strong career as well, which she's had to pause because she's gone on maternity leave. But for her, it's adapting to a new role, to do that. But she's done it magnificently.
Yeah, that's amazing. I think that's so true. Like I always say that to my husband, like I could not do this career without you. He's like my soundboard, you know, especially if you've had a rough day or you've got a busy week, having a partner that understands that is so key, because you just said something that was really amazing, right? That you're both important. Both roles are important. Yeah. And if one feels like one is more important, then you've got that sort of confrontation. And I mean,
there's resentment, right? Like you resent the other person because you're like, well, I'm doing all this and you're not doing that. And it's an acknowledgement that just because they're different doesn't make them one lesser or one more important. Just because one deposits money in a bank account or just because one has more direct involvement with children doesn't make one a higher priority than the other. They're both important. Yeah. Like without both of them, the family falls apart really. But you see it a lot. This industry can be brutal on relationships because you need someone that can not necessarily even understand because they're not in the shoes, but empathize, support, like those kinds of things.
Oh, for sure.
So like I can't really understand what it's like to have every day at home with children and a baby hanging off me and being fed and being
Sounds
sleep
scary.
deprived. Yeah. Well, I think, but I can empathize and support her as best I can. So I try and do that, and she does the same as well.
Yeah. It's no balance, just all equal, and you just got to be understanding that both roles are hard.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, both roles are hard. That's a really good way of putting it. Like neither of us are getting off easy. Like we're both doing it hard, but we're both contributing to, overall what makes up our family.
Yeah. And of course, like in your career, because you're doing so well, like she's got to see that, and she's doing so well as a mum, and you see that. So you both see each other for what you are. And that's amazing. So
and I admire her versatility. She, as I said, she has a really strong career.
What is the career?
She's head of fundraising for the Royal Flying Doctors.
Oh my gosh!
So she works in non-for-profit. Yeah,
wow.
large team that reports to her. She's she wouldn't say it, but she's a very good leader, very smart, understands how things function really well, and to be able to pivot out of that to step into being a mother, like that's a lot of versatility. Like a lot of versatility. I don't think I'd have that versatility. Like if I couldn't call auctions, I genuinely don't know what I'd do. Like I feel like
I'm in the same boat right now.
I'd be homeless within a week, I think. So I do really admire that, because that's a very unselfish act to pause a career that's very strong that she's been working on for a decade plus, to step out of it, take it on for our family, and then try and unpause it. That's a really unselfish act.
Yeah. And that's a big thing with like women in business too. Like I feel that fear all the time. I think, oh my God, like how will I have a baby? Because then my career's gone, and that's me, exactly what you're saying. Like if you didn't call auctioneers, like what would you do? But
and that, like, again, it's something that I can't understand that because I'll never be faced with that situation. I can empathize and say, like, I imagine that'd be really hard, but I can't understand what that'd be like.
Yeah.
We were having a conversation on the weekend about, there's obviously a big awareness around domestic violence against women at the moment. We're having a conversation around that and talking about situations and things and things that have occurred, and like it's so hard. Like obviously I support it, but it's so hard to put myself in that situation because it's never happened to me and it's unlikely to ever happen to me. So there's a difference I think between fully understanding and empathizing. I try and empathize, but I can't fully understand because I'm not in that situation and never will be. But that doesn't mean that you can also say, well, it's not relevant to me, and turn it off and off you go.
Yeah. Just being able to empathize but not understand, and I guess watch from the outside what it might feel like. But you don't really ever know until you're in those shoes.
Lived experience, right?
And is she like raising awareness for that, or?
Oh no, we're just having a conversation because it was in the news. So it was kind of topical, and the AFL did a thing on the game I went to Sunday night where they had a minute silence before the game, and guess it worked because we were having a conversation about it on Monday morning. So funny how it works out.
I know, it's crazy. And I mean all the stuff that's happening in the world, I try not to watch that stuff, trying to keep the happy brain, you know?
Yeah.
But there is, stuff like that happening all the time. And I empathize with that too. I couldn't understand how that feels. So,
Yeah. Yeah. It's very, very sad.
very sad. Back to, let's just like cut the sad, man.
Yep.
I'm sorry for everyone that's going through stuff like that. But I think for you and I here, what I really love about how you work the auction floor is you being able to read people. And I want to pivot the conversation back, like family life, wholesome, all of that stuff, but talking back into like our world and the people that are listening into auctions. What do you think makes a good auctioneer? Because I know like when we have you, when you're working and running the show, like you can just read the room. Even if they're on the phone, you have this crazy ability to understand like how to push, who to pull. How did you learn those skills?
I just learned experience. It's just time. Like it's honestly just seeing certain traits or patterns of behavior that repeat themselves. That's, and then identifying them and kind of working what you can do to do that. I think you asked what makes a good auctioneer. I think there's two things. First one is you have to be able to count. Like it seems funny,
To
but
count.
it's...
No,
Yeah.
Sometimes people throw bids at you and I'm like, how did you even work that out? And I'll say like, the number, not the whole amount, because I don't know how to add it up.
So I think being able to count, because if you can count, if you're not good at maths, your whole auction's different because you're terrified about dropping bids or you're slower to add up or you need to check the scribe or whatever. Because if you can count and you're confident, you never have to worry about a number, which allows you to be more open and engaging to the crowd. The biggest one though, I think, is your ability to think on your feet. If you can think on your feet, almost every other skill as an auctioneer you can learn, but if you can't think on your feet or process things really quickly, it's going to be very, very difficult for you because you're reacting to everything that's going on around you.
Yes.
So you see something, you react, you say something, you see something, you react, say like, and you're at the whole time, you might be here in your mind, you're retaining where the bid's at. That's the kind of central number. But at the same time, you're thinking about, okay, what am I going to do if no one bids? What's my next strategy from here? Am I going to pass it in? Am I going to call it on the market? Am I going to sell it? Am I going to lower the number I'm asking for? What was the last bid of that person? So what's their number? What were they bidding against their last increment? Was it higher? Was it lower? Their last two bids, they bid higher, they bid lower. So are they actually slowing down or speeding up? Are they having a conversation which shows that they're in their decision zone? Have I gone first, second, third time? Can I do it again? Do I need to buy time? If I need to buy time, I'll make a joke about something, or they're like, all these things are running through your head while you're retaining what the number's at. So that ability to think on your feet is critically important. Fast processing is just about the biggest hallmark of great auctioneers.
Yeah, and you definitely do that well. I think even the thinking on your feet, cracking a joke. You can crack a joke at a time where it's like super tense. There's like silence, but all this stuff has just happened and your brain's like still centered enough to crack a joke and remember the number that you're at. That is an amazing skill.
Yeah, it's been a learnt skill. But I always think the best representation of an auctioneer will be that they're an authentic version of themselves. So if we're having a conversation here and then I stood up over there and called an auction, I'd be the same person doing that as I am sitting right here. What I think some auctioneers struggle with is they think they have to play a role. So they basically put on a persona to call an auction and then they're different to that.
Yeah.
That kind of thinking on your feet and humor being a way to diffuse situations, that's me as a person. So
yeah, you're very witty.
I can't remember. I gave you grief about something on the way up here. I can't remember what it was, but
it wasn't the jockey comment from yesterday.
Yeah, that was hurtful. Yeah, hurtful. Was that Troy? Troy that said that?
That was me,
It
but
was
we'll
you.
blame Troy.
Yeah, I was in a circle with you, Troy Fitzgerald, and me, and I'm the tallest one out of the three. And you made a joke that I would have been the ex-jockey, but anyway, I know you haven't got your heels on today, but you got a little bit extra
Well, I
lift
thought we
there
could
at the
do
back.
a test to see who's taller.
Yeah, take your heels off, I'll take my heels off, and we'll see. But that's me as a person. I like humor. I like humor is a great way to diffuse tension, appropriately used. So as an auctioneer, that's going to be how I'm going to operate as well.
Yeah.
It's a very serious, intense situation. If we can ease people and make them feel a little bit better, then they're more likely to engage.
Yeah, that's definitely an amazing skill that you have, because as soon as you pop a joke, everyone's laughing and they're like, oh, I feel better. And then
Yeah.
you'll usually get a bid like just after that, because the tension's gone from
Yeah.
the room and people feel more comfortable with you. I think just on that, like being comfortable and removing tension, how do you think, like for a buyer that's going into a situation, they're making a bid at auction or they're making a play, what are 3 key things that you think buyers can do to help them have more confidence in bidding at an auction and actually winning?
Yeah. First one's do the research. So research everything they can. So research the property, research the auctions that have happened in the area. If it's an auction, research the auctioneer if they know who it's going to be. The more that you can kind of remove the uncomfortableness or what you're expecting to happen situation, the better off you're going to be. We had a young lady actually researched, apparently she watched a whole lot of videos of auctions and me calling auctions before we did an auction last weekend, and she was so confident, like
A buyer.
bang, bang, bang. Yeah, buyer. Yeah.
Researched you.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah, so she knew kind of, I know that when you say this, you're going to do this. And I know, like, I was like, oh, wow, I didn't know I did that. So, but the second one to be confident, like, be confident. Everyone has this mentality, they'll go to an auction, I just wait and see what happens. If you do that, you're going to get swallowed up. Like, the only way to buy the auction is bidding. So if your strategy isn't bidding, it's not going to work.
Yeah.
So be confident. The last one is have your 3 figures set out. So 3 figures we talk about is your dream figure that you'd love to buy it for, the fair figure that you think it will sell for, and the absolute walkaway figure. Between your dream figure and your fair figure, you should be sprinting. Like sprinting. Don't slow down, sprint. Between your fair figure and your absolute, you should be jogging. What a lot of people do is they try and start it low and then they try and go really low bids to try and make it a game of like survival. It sends the wrong message to your competitors. You want to be showing your competitors that you're strong, not that you're weak. So having those plans, working in towards those 3 figures, can give you, I guess, the best chance of success.
Really great tips. I think you said this once, if you don't bid, you have a 0% chance of buying the property. And I say that all the time to people because they do stay back and they don't say anything. But then as a vendor, you have no evidence of what people want to pay for your property, especially if you're not actively bidding, right? If you're just sitting back and waiting, they're never going to call it on the market either.
Of course they're not. Yep. Oh, we're going to wait till it comes on the market. Well, if we have 5 bidders and every one of them says the same thing as you, nothing happens. We pass it in and then you're going to moan about multiple offers. So, like, if you want to buy it, buy it. If you don't want to buy it, that's okay. Like, we're not here to force you to buy something you don't want to buy. But assuming that you've been to the property 3 times, you're giving your license to a stranger, you're giving up your Friday morning or Friday lunchtime, there's some clues there that you want to buy it. Let's work on that. This kind of, it's too cool for school. You get the buyers that tell you they don't want to buy it. The seller tells you they don't want to sell it. It's like, well, I don't know why you're trying to bluff me because I'm the only one that's getting paid here. Like, I'm good. Like, if I walk out of here, I'm still getting paid. You want to buy the house, that hasn't happened yet. You want to sell the house, that hasn't happened yet. The agent wants to get paid, that hasn't happened yet. I'm the only one that's good. So you don't need to lie to me. I'm okay. But that's okay. I understand there's things like fear and ego that sit to make that happen, but you've got to bid. There's no other way of doing it.
Yeah, I think you said another stat as well about like the person that makes the first bid. Is that 68% of the time?
Yep, 68% of the times you've done your research. 68% of the times the opening bidder buys the property.
Yeah, it's actually so true though, because the amount of times we watch an auction happen and the first bidder, because they're more confident, right? They're going into
They've got a plan.
They're acting more confident. They're going to own it.
And sometimes their level of confidence can intimidate the other ones out, which is what you want as a buyer. You want less competition, not more competition.
Yeah, no, they're really good tips. Thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome.
And I guess I know you're a bit time poor and I'll try and wrap it up. We could talk for ages, but I want to talk about the Gold Coast market because you see it on all facets, right? Because you're quite in depth and in all different agencies. What do you see happening in the market at the moment?
It's probably just a little bit inconsistent. I think the market's still good. We have obviously very low stock levels in just about every suburb and demand's still pretty solid. The only exception to that is that properties that have maybe an issue or two, like maybe there's some water overland flow, for example, or there might be a little bit of road noise or may need a bit too much work to be done. Buyers can sometimes talk themselves out of those ones. But on the whole, it's pretty solid. It's been a really kind of strong and stable start to the year, and I think it's going to continue. Interest rates got held on Tuesday. The next decision will be fascinating. Yeah, well, it's funny because coming into it, people are saying it's going to go up, people are saying it's going to go down, and when you get 2 contrasting opinions, usually it stays where it is.
Yeah.
But I think stability is good. Like, we're in an election year too this year, which has kind of slid under the radar a little bit, but election years traditionally hold the market. It hasn't happened this year. So maybe as we get close to October, there might be some more hesitation that comes in, but all in all, I think it's a good, solid, stable market for really everyone who's involved.
For sure. We're definitely feeling that as well. I think our clearance rates through the roof. What's yours at the moment?
Very high. Yeah, the highest on the Gold Coast. No, I'm joking.
Book with me at Apollo Auctions.
Yeah, that's right. Look, our clearance rate fluctuates a little bit. I think the Gold Coast clearance rate is sitting in the mid-60s at the moment, which is pretty healthy.
Yeah.
When I first started calling auctions way back when, the clearance rate in Southeast Queensland at large usually sat in the early 30s. So
No
we've come a
way.
long way in that time. Like even our off weeks now are way better than what it was back then. So that's where I start my story. You know, back in my day, you know, we had to walk 18 kilometres to do an auction, and there was no hammers. You know,
We rode a horse in there.
yeah, but the market just wasn't what it is today. We were on the back of the GFC, like all those kinds of things. So we're pretty lucky, really.
So that mid 60% that you were
Yep.
saying in comparative to like pre-COVID, how does that compare?
Well, pre-COVID was sort of mid-40s. So,
okay.
yeah, mid-40s to occasionally get over 50 was a really good week.
Yeah.
2021 supercharged it, no question. 2021 we were looking at 80% most weeks plus.
Yeah.
Some weeks were even in the 90s. But that was a superficial heightened market that just couldn't stay. Like it was never going to stay like that for a long period of time because it was just red hot. It was just a matter of how quickly it would run out. And it probably ran out a bit quicker than I thought it was going to. But since then, like stock levels have been so low that it's kind of kept the market pretty strong.
It's interesting. Hey, like we had this massive like increase in pricing. We're like, oh no, what's going to happen
Yeah.
next? It just kept going.
Yeah.
But it's like inconsistent and a little bit more stable. There's not as much sort of like aggressive buying.
Yeah.
But it's definitely like the prices are holding and the like clearance rates are still really good.
Yeah, and I think it's a good time to sell and it's a reasonable time to buy. And I always think don't let good or reasonable, don't drop that to the side and pursue the perfect. It's never going to be the perfect time to sell. The perfect time to sell is only going to become clear in hindsight. Same as the perfect time to buy. We had a lot of sellers in late 2021 who said, "No, we're waiting. We're going to ride this thing out and then we're going to sell." And then 12 months later, they're like, geez, I wish we'd sold back in 2021. Had a lot of buyers, you know, who had a bit of hesitation and fear at the end of COVID or 2021. Oh, no, we're going to wait for the market to crash. And then now they're still waiting.
Still waiting. Yeah.
You know, if you have to wait for your own financial reasons or personal reasons, I understand that. But if you're trying to wait to wait out the market, like, what's the point? Like, what's the point? You know, because if you're buying and selling, it's going to be reflective of what you buy or sell anyway, so it doesn't really matter. And also, the only time you're going to realize that it's the best time to sell is be after it's passed, not during it. And same with buying. So don't let good or reasonable get in the way of perfect.
That's a great tip.
Or don't let perfect get in the way of good or reasonable, I should say. Yeah, other way around. Yeah.
I heard it the other way around.
Yeah,
anyway.
I said it. I meant it the other way around, but anyway.
There's no perfect way to execute buying or selling. And people say, oh my gosh, like that person did this and did so well with their profits that they made. Like they just got lucky with
Just
timing.
timing.
Like they didn't know
just timing.
that, that was going to happen.
Yep, just timing. And if you wait long enough, it's not going to matter anyway, right? Like we sell these properties. We had one yesterday that they'd had it for 42 years and they bought it for $15,000 or something. Like just time.
What did it sell for?
I think it was in the early 2 millions from memory.
42 years. It's a bit of capital
it's
growth there.
Very good capital growth. Yeah. But time, time cures everything.
No, that's awesome. Well, I really appreciate you coming on the podcast today. I guess I just want to finish with a little quote. What's your favorite quote?
Oh, gee, question without notice. Favorite quote?
You pop quotes out like no tomorrow.
Yeah, I know, but not on the spot like this.
Okay, sorry.
What's my favorite quote? Oh, there's a few, but they're really cliched, so I'm afraid to use a cliched one because people will roll their eyes. I do love the quote that says, people won't remember what you said or what they did, they'll remember the way that you made them feel.
Oh, I do love that.
I think it's so true. Like, you never really remember what someone says to you, but you'll remember the vibe that you had from that conversation, years down the track or that interaction. The harder I work, the luckier I get. I think that's a good one too.
That is a good one.
Yeah.
Someone said that to me the other day and I was like, oh, because I always say I'm lucky. Like I always say I'm so lucky, good things happen, but I work really fucking hard.
But overarchingly, I said it earlier, is that if you feel good, you'll do good. Feel
Love
good, do
that.
good. Yep.
Amazing.
There you go,
Thank you
three.
so much.
Three, you're
Yay,
welcome. Thanks,
3
Gypsy.
quotes.
Pleasure.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye.